All right, so you're ready to set some goals and actually achieve them. This is Sunny again, bringing you one of the most important lessons for your life. Trust me, you need to start with this skill. We're diving into the Franklin Planner training. We will be talking pyramids. We will be talking Ben Franklin. We're even talking about I-beams. Trust me, it's all going to make sense. But you know what really stands out in the Franklin Planner approach is this emphasis on building a solid foundation, just like constructing a pyramid. It's not just about setting any random goal, it's about starting with the bedrock. Your values. So values are like the base of our goal-setting pyramid. The Franklin Planner video actually uses the pyramids of Egypt as an example. You know, those things were built to last, and it all starts with that massive base. And when it comes to values, the Franklin Planner folks bring up a pretty inspiring figure, Benjamin Franklin. We all know him as a founding father, an inventor, but he was also a master of self-improvement. He had this whole system for defining his personal virtues. 13 of them. It was like his own personal code of conduct. So we're talking about good old Ben Franklin's 13 virtues. Well, what's interesting is that he didn't just list them out. He took the time to define each one in a way that was meaningful to him. For example, his top virtue was temperance, which he defined as eat not to dullness, drink not to elevation. He was all about moderation and self-control. I can't even imagine trying to live up to that one. I mean, pizza and Netflix are pretty tempting. But hold on, how does all this virtue stuff relate to setting goals today? It feels a little old school. It might seem old school, but the principle is timeless. Franklin's virtues were his guiding lights. They helped him prioritize his time and energy. And that's what we're talking about here, right? Figuring out what truly matters to you and letting those values guide your goals. So how do we go about figuring out our own values? The Franklin Planner folks have a 3-step process for this. First, you need to identify your values. Now, this might sound easy, but it can actually be pretty tricky. Yeah. We often go through life without really thinking about what drives us at our core. Well, this is where it gets interesting. They have this thought experiment that they call the I-beam experiment. Imagine you're standing on one end of a narrow I-beam, way up high, no safety net. What would it take for you to cross? $1 million. Someone you love in danger. I'm starting to see how this connects to values. Exactly. It forces you to confront what's truly important to you. What principles would you risk everything for? What would make you step onto that I-beam without hesitation? Those are your core values. That's a powerful way to think about it. So once we've identified those I-beam worthy values, what's next? Next, we need to define them. And I don't just mean with a dictionary definition. It's about getting specific about what those values look like in action. One of the Franklin Planner hosts uses the example of being a loving husband. He defines it with behaviors like telling his wife he loves her every day, being affectionate, and prioritizing quality time with her. I'm seeing how this gets practical. So instead of just saying family is important to me, I might say being a present and supportive father is a core value. And that means putting my phone away during dinner and being there for my kids' soccer games. Exactly. It's about translating those abstract values into tangible actions. And the Franklin Planner training even goes a step further, suggesting the use of positive affirmations. Affirmations. There's actually some science behind it. By repeatedly affirming those desired behaviors that reflect our values, we're actually reinforcing neural pathways in our brains, making those actions more likely to happen. So, by affirming those positive actions that align with our values, we're essentially training our brains to act in a way that supports our goals. So we've identified our values, we've defined them, and we're affirming them. What's next in this Franklin Planner goal-setting journey? The final step in this stage is prioritization. It's about recognizing that some values might hold more weight than others in certain situations. And that's okay. It's a dynamic process, and those priorities can shift over time as our lives change. It makes sense that different values might come into play at different points in our lives. It's not about being rigid, it's about being aware and adaptable. So let's say I've got my values pyramid base all figured out. How do I actually start setting goals that build on this foundation? That's where we get into the nitty-gritty of goal setting, and the Franklin Planner talks about a concept you've probably heard before, SMART goals. But they put their own spin on it. Let's unpack these SMART goals, Franklin Planner style. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. But the Franklin Planner training takes it a step further. They emphasize that your goals should be owned, meaning they truly resonate with you, and realistic, meaning you can actually achieve them given your current circumstances. So it's not just about setting any random goal that fits the SMART criteria, it's about making sure it aligns with your values. They give some great examples in the video, like planning a trip to Bali or setting fitness goals, and they stress the importance of breaking down large goals into smaller, more manageable tasks. For example, instead of just saying, I want to get in shape, you might set a specific goal of running a 5K in 6 months. And then you break it down into even smaller steps, like finding a training plan, scheduling your runs, and maybe even finding a running buddy for accountability. It's that process of breaking things down that makes those big, daunting goals seem less overwhelming and more achievable. So we're starting to build the levels of our goal-setting pyramid here. We've got the base of values, we're using SMART goals as the building blocks, and we're breaking those goals down into smaller steps. This is starting to feel like a real plan. And this is where that constant interplay between your values and goals comes into play. The Franklin Planner folks encourage you to keep asking yourself, how are my values driving my goals, and how are my goals helping me live out those values? That makes a lot of sense. It's like a feedback loop. As you set and achieve goals, you learn more about yourself and your values, which can then inform your future goals. Exactly. It's a dynamic process, and it's what keeps you moving forward in a way that's authentic and fulfilling. But setting goals is only part of the equation, right? We also need to figure out how to actually make them happen. That's where the Franklin Planner approach really shines. They have a whole system for putting those goals into action, starting with weekly and daily planning. Weekly and daily planning, that sounds structured. It is, but in a good way. It's about being proactive with your time and making sure your actions are aligned with your goals. I'm ready to dive into the practical side of things. Let's talk weekly planning. What's the Franklin Planner wisdom on that? Well, think of weekly planning as your chance to step back and make sure you're on the right track. The Franklin Planner video breaks it down into 3 key steps. First, you review your values and goals, reminding yourself of that bigger picture. Then you identify your big rocks for the week. Big rocks. Think of it like this. If you have a jar and you need to fit in big rocks, pebbles and sand, what happens if you start with the sand? You'll never get those big rocks in. I remember my grandpa used to use this analogy all the time. He was a big believer in prioritizing. Those big rocks are your key priorities for the week. The things that align with your values and contribute to your long-term goals. Maybe it's finishing a crucial project at work, having a date night with your partner, or carving out time for that creative hobby you've been neglecting. So it's about figuring out what really matters and making sure those things get the attention they deserve before the whirlwind of the week takes over. Once you've identified your big rocks, you schedule them into your week. The Franklin Planner also emphasizes the importance of distinguishing between time-flexible tasks and time-specific appointments. Time-flexible tasks versus appointments. What's the key difference here? Appointments like meetings, doctor's visits, or your kid's soccer game go directly on your calendar. Those are non-negotiable chunks of time that you've committed to someone else. Those are set in stone, but tasks are more flexible. Like, I could choose when to write that report or respond to emails, right? The Franklin Planner method encourages you to estimate how long each task will take and then block out time in your schedule accordingly. And remember, life happens. Always factor in potential interruptions and build in some buffer time. I'm definitely guilty of underestimating how long things will take. It happens to the best of us. The Franklin Planner even introduces a cool tool called the Weekly Compass Card. Okay, it's a visual aid that helps you focus on different roles in your life, like sharpening the saw, which is all about self-care, spouse, team leader, parent, volunteer, you name it. It helps you make sure you're dedicating time and energy to all the important areas of your life. So instead of just focusing on work deadlines, you're also making time for family, personal growth, and even giving back to the community. It's about creating a more balanced and fulfilling life. Absolutely. And speaking of balance, let's move on to daily planning. The Franklin Planner training emphasizes 3 key steps for daily planning. First, you address your appointments. Those are already on your calendar, so you build your day around them. Then you create a realistic to-do list for the day. A realistic to-do list. I'm stressing that word realistic because sometimes I get a little carried away and end up with a to-do list that's longer than a CVS receipt. It's easy to overestimate what we can accomplish in a day. That's why the Franklin Planner video stresses the importance of prioritizing. They suggest using the ABC method where A tasks are the most critical, B tasks are important but can be pushed if needed, and C tasks are those nice-to-haves. I've heard of the ABC method. They recommend using numerical sequencing, so your most urgent and important task becomes A1 followed by A2, B1, and so on. It helps you stay focused and ensures you're tackling the most crucial items first. It's like creating a hierarchy of importance within your to-do list. It's all about getting laser-focused. But here's a real-world question. Where are we supposed to find the time for all this planning? Life is busy. The Franklin Planner video actually addresses that. They suggest finding a quiet place for daily planning, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes. It could be first thing in the morning, the night before, or even during your lunch break. You know, my grandpa always used to say, for every minute you spend planning, you save 3 to 4 in action. It might seem counterintuitive to take time out of your day to plan, but in the long run it can save you so much time and stress. It's about working smarter, not harder. And remember, the Franklin Planner method isn't about being rigid. Life throws curveballs, and sometimes you need to adjust your plans on the fly. The key is to have a system that allows you to adapt while still staying aligned with your goals and values. So we've covered values, SMART goals, weekly planning, and now daily planning. It's like we've built this entire goal-setting pyramid brick by brick. But the Franklin Planner doesn't stop there. They also talk about actually using a planner to manage all of this. They walk you through the different sections of the Franklin Planner, explaining how each part works together. They talk about the daily record, which is a detailed log of your day, where you track your appointments, tasks, and even your thoughts and feelings. Wait, tracking your thoughts and feelings, what's the point of that? It's about becoming more self-aware. By tracking your mood and energy levels throughout the day, you can start to identify patterns. Maybe you realize you're most productive in the mornings, or that certain tasks tend to drain your energy. That's fascinating. And then they talk about the master task list, where you brain dump all those to-dos and nagging thoughts that are swirling around in your head. It's about getting them out of your mental RAM and onto paper, where you can start to process them systematically. I need this master task list in my life like yesterday. I feel like my brain is constantly overflowing with to-dos. It's a game changer. And then once you have everything on your master task list, you can start to break down those larger tasks into smaller steps and assign them to specific days or weeks in your planner. So it's about taking those overwhelming to-dos and transforming them into a manageable, actionable plan. It's about taking control of your time and your life. And what's so brilliant about the Franklin Planner method is its flexibility. They encourage you to experiment with different layouts, color coding systems, and organizational strategies until you find a system that feels intuitive and empowering. We all have different styles and preferences, but there's one thing that often trips me up. Consistency. I can get really excited about a new system, and then a few weeks later, I've fallen off the wagon. How do we avoid that with the Franklin Planner method? They address that too. They emphasize that it's not about being perfect. It's about showing up every day and making a conscious effort to use your planner as a tool for living a more intentional and productive life. They also encourage you to celebrate your wins, both big and small, and be patient with yourself. Well, building new habits takes time and effort. That's so important, celebrating those wins, even the small ones. It's about recognizing that progress is progress, no matter how small. It's about focusing on those positive steps forward rather than beating yourself up over the occasional slip-up. And remember, you don't have to do it all alone. The Franklin Planner folks encourage seeking support from others, whether it's a mentor, a coach, or a friend who's also on a goal-setting journey. There's something powerful about having that accountability partner, someone who understands the challenges and can offer encouragement. They even suggest forming a mastermind group, a small group of people who meet regularly to share ideas, offer support, and hold each other accountable. It's like having a built-in cheer squad for your goals. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. For me, the biggest takeaway is that it's not just about getting things done. It's about living a life that's aligned with your values and your goals. It's about making conscious choices about how you spend your time and your energy and creating a life that truly matters. It's not just about productivity for productivity's sake. It's about using those tools and techniques to create a life that's meaningful and fulfilling. And as we've been talking about this Franklin Planner method, I've been thinking about how these principles could be applied on a larger scale, like beyond just our individual lives. What if we approach those complex challenges like climate change or poverty with the same level of intentionality and organization that the Franklin Planner method promotes? Could we make even greater progress? That's a fascinating thought, and it highlights the potential impact of these seemingly simple yet profound concepts. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Franklin Planner training, I want to leave you with this question. What's one small step you can take today to start putting these principles into action? What's your first big rock? Remember, even the most ambitious goals are achieved one step at a time. Start small, stay consistent, and watch as your progress unfolds. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Find an accountability buddy, join a mastermind group, or seek guidance from a mentor. Having that support system can make all the difference. It's about embracing the journey and celebrating those wins along the way. Well, there you have it. We've taken a deep dive into the Franklin Planner training, exploring its wisdom on goal setting, planning, and intentional living. It's a system that has helped countless people achieve their dreams and live more fulfilling lives. And it all starts with taking that first step. So, what are you waiting for? Get out there and start building your own pyramid of success. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep reaching for those stars.